Times were tough, so I sold my soul. And I don't think I'll ever regain control. Devil looked me in the eye, now I look the other way. What else could I do? I just stood at the doorway, knew I'd rather be drunk with you. I'd rather be drunk.
Hey Internet, Dracofunk here. Welcome back to my reusable space program. And we are launching another space utility vehicle. Although this time, I'm actually launching it with passengers. It has 4 passengers. Reusable! Anyway, 4 passengers that it's going to be taking to Duna. And these guys will be the crew of the Duna space station as we bring it online, hopefully in the next episode. So I'm just launching this into orbit. I ejected the solid rocket boosters, and these 4 side strap-on boosters will help get this up to orbital speed. They will eject. They also have parachutes and will be recovered by the Kerbin Navy. There they go. And the main booster will propel us to our orbital velocity. And Jin Long is the commander for this craft. I forget what I intended to name this. But here we are. We are now in a rather eccentric orbit. We'll fix that later. But as this is a reusable space program, we have to return the booster. I'm trying to get better about that because I come in between episodes and I realize there's like 3 or 4 boosters in orbit. I still have a couple things I'm going to have to land. I'll probably do those off screen. I'm out of regular rocket fuel, so I'll use the RCS to land it. And here we are coming in for a re-entry. I'm right on the verge of these large docking ports burning up. So what I do to avoid burning up is I only let them... I set my periapsis for the new orbit about around 50, maybe between 50 and 48 kilometers, just enough so that the atmospheric drag actually will bring the apoapsis down to where it's going to land. And if you try and go deeper in the atmosphere, you're actually come down at a steeper angle, and that's when you start burning up, and that's not in the spirit of the reusable space program. And we have splashed down, and we're going to turn over and only slightly damage one of the tanks, but it will be repaired. I mean, I'm sure I'm getting like 90% reusable, which, I'm trying, but I will go ahead and recover this, as is the Kerbin Navy is doing all the recovering. Now, this is Enterprise Station in orbit of Kerbin. It is the point in Kerbin orbit where all the craft park, refuel, and can be based at and do their missions. You have the Manly there on the side, the Space Bus number 1. The original mining craft is also there, but what has just departed is the Ares craft. And I'm just going to not time excel, but fast forward through its little rendezvous maneuvers. So before I send the space utility vehicle to Duna, it can't just, it's taking passengers, but it also needs to take some equipment. So I'm going to have the Ares craft rendezvous with the foldable truss that I launched. Was that last episode or a couple episodes ago? Well, anyway, it's going to rendezvous with that and tow it back to the space utility vehicle. And then the space utility vehicle, which I've named after an SUV, and I don't remember which one. We made a joke about it a couple years ago when I had to rent a vehicle, and I was supposed to be renting a small sedan, and I ended up with one of those, like a big SUV, simply because Enterprise Rental Company messed up and did not have a car for me, and it's kind of a funny situation. Like, I knew this guy didn't have any cars, and there's me and another person there waiting to pick up our cars, and I'd already been there for 20 minutes. And he just looked around and said, "Good news, everybody, I can upgrade somebody." And the other lady who was there before me did not want to drive something that big, so I ended up with it. I'm like, well, I'm kind of worried about the gas. He's like, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to write on the sheet that the gas tank is empty." And even though it was basically full. So I also got a free tank of gas. And, anyway, besides the point. I am fixing that eccentric orbit. And right now I'm going to, if I don't bring my periapsis up, I'm going to be flying through the atmosphere. So let's do that. And I get us in a pretty much 100-kilometer orbit. Now we can go back to the S.U.V, set the target for the Ares craft, and set the target for the S.U.V, and go through all the rendezvous procedures. So now this truss is different. I use some of the robotic parts, so once it arrives at Duna, I can unfurl the arms that have the radiators and solar panels, and it is one less piece than some of the other ones, which are nice because, well, that's one less trip we have to make to Duna. Although I probably will have one of the following missions carry two things, but I gotta be really careful. The craft I have that are going there need to make sure they have enough Delta V. I do think I may send one of the Ares craft like this that can be docked at the Duna main station and kind of do the same job. I think that if I send it with a LOX tank that's full, that it will have enough Delta V. If you're only going to Duna and you're not worried about doing a return and capture orbit into Kerbin, you really don't need a ton of Delta V. Like, comfortably 3,000 Delta V will do it. As you can see, the S.U.V right now, we have 5,000 Delta V, which is plenty. Now, obviously, that's going to go down when I attach this space truss to it, because added weight means less acceleration from the engines, which translates to less Delta V. Now, I'm going to make a mistake here in just a second. Well, after the docking. So right now I'm just visually docking the truss to the S.U.V. and it seems like I'm coming in really nice and straight, and somehow it turns a little bit and then it docks. But that's okay, I'm just going to leave it like this. Now, before I head out, I'm going to go ahead and the Ares craft is returning to Enterprise Station. I cut out a little bit of the whole rendezvous stuff because you've seen that. So it's gone through all the rendezvous maneuvers and it's approaching the station. I'm going to have to do a boost because the periapsis of the station is getting dangerously close to the atmosphere. And it does change every now and then when a craft docks to it, and I don't want it to get too low. I would like the periapsis to be no lower than 75 kilometers. And we're just coming in for a docking on the lower docking ports where most of the craft can park. But it's time to send the S.U.V. to Duna. Now here's my mistake. I did not realize I was still controlling the craft from the back docking port. So I started the burn and I was actually adding Delta V to it. But I fixed that and I'm not super worried. But it is going to kind of mess up my encounter. But that's okay. So I have plenty of Delta V. This is going to take about 1100 to get a Duna encounter. And unfortunately, I think that little misfire and then late firing actually makes it so that this burn actually won't get me a Duna encounter, and I'm going to have to mess with my course a little bit just to bring everything as close as I would like it to be. And if that happens, it's really not that hard. Just I use the JKLI keys to kind of figure out which way I need to go. And if it seems like I have to go a very long way, I will just figure out which way I need to burn and use the main engines to do so. And here I am getting on escape trajectory. Now, if you can make it to Minmus, it only takes about another 100 Delta V to get an encounter with Duna than it does to get a Minmus encounter. So you can see I have a close approach, but I do not have an encounter, and I'm just using the JKLI keys to bring my closest approach closer. And this will get me an encounter, but my periapsis isn't going to be anywhere close to where I need it to be. Now I have an encounter. I'm actually using the engines to burn, and I'll get them as close as I can and then start using the RCS thrusters. So you can see my periapsis is pretty high at the moment. And I'm bringing it down, but I really want to get a close periapsis just so if I get it now, I can do the burn once I get to Duna. I have just under 3,000 Delta V now, and I already have a Duna encounter, so I feel pretty confident that I can make it there and do all the maneuvering I'm going to need to do. So now I'm just going to time warp to a sphere of influence change. And this is not to get to Duna. This is to get out of Kerbin's sphere of influence, where I'm actually orbiting Kerbal, the sun of the Kerbin system. And now I'm making a small maneuver node just to get my periapsis down to where I want it. And at this point, it's okay to burn a little early. I know it says like 2 hours, 20 minutes till the burn time. I'm just doing it now because it's not going to make a whole lot of difference if I do it now or do it in 2 hours. And I'm just fine-tuning things. And now I'm going to set my alarm with a sphere of influence change, and then I'm going to set a manual alarm just in case, because I had that bug during the first mission to Duna, and I just want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And the bug was where, as I got closer to Duna, the sphere of influence time was changing, and it was actually changing my alarm where I would warp past Duna. All right, so here we are. We are now in Duna's sphere of influence. I'm making another maneuver node just to adjust my orbit so I'm not coming in a really eccentric orbit, and it's more efficient with your delta V to do it as early as possible. And now I'm just adjusting my periapsis because it's a little bit lower than I really wanted it. And there's really nothing wrong with that. I just want to come in at about a 400 kilometer periapsis, and it doesn't have to be exact. But now I'll set one last alarm for Duna periapsis, and here we are. We've reached Duna periapsis. I'm going to turn and burn retrograde, and we have done it. We are one step closer to having the Duna system have a fully reusable space program like we have in the Kerbin system. I mean, we still have a ways to go. This next episode, we will get the station assembled. We're going to have to actually bring the components to another space station so we can set up a fuel depot and transfer in Ike orbit, because we're going to be mining Ike for fuel and bringing it back to the main Duna station, which we will bring online in the next episode and set it up with a name. So I've been naming all my space stations after the space shuttles. So you should be able to figure out what this station will be named. I mean, put a message in the comments if you think you know. But anyway, hey, join me. I'm doing the 100 subscriber special where I'm driving a rover train to the South Pole. If you haven't, like and subscribe. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and, check out the other things we do. And, yeah, just have a good night, everybody.